was seen in the vicinity where Chanel Green was originally abducted in Garfield Park. He was described as a street person, possibly a homeless man. I'd like to have someone stop by here tomorrow morning to talk to the teachers again. It could be an important lead.
An ounce of prevention, she said, then laughed at herself. That's what's known as teacher talk. You can catch a dose of it if you hang around here too long. It drives my husband crazy.
Is your husband a teacher too? I asked.
It just came out. Shit.
She shook her head.
George is a lawyer.
Well, I wanted to pass on the news about our suspect. I said, maybe we have a real suspect this time. I've got to run. I pulled my car way down the street and watched the truth school for a couple of hours that night. My son's school. Maybe a homeless white man would come by. But one didn't.
On the hour-long drive back to Washington, Sam Harrison seemed distracted and distant. He and Sarah had been sailplaning that afternoon, floating silently high above Camp David, the presidential retreat. Sam had already known a lot about Camp David, but still he knew the view from the air could be useful. An attack on the presidential outpost was a very real possibility in the future, especially if the Secret Service continued to keep President Burns tightly under wraps, as they had for the past few days. "See you soon, Mr. President," Sam had thought. "There's nothing you can do to stop this from happening." Now, as they drove from Frederick Municipal Airport in Maryland, Sarah cautiously watched Sam out of the corner of her eye. It was as if he were still up in the sailplane. He could get like this sometimes, but then again so could she. Sarah the worrier, Sarah the drudge. "I was just thinking about the game and how it's going," he finally said. "I was considering a game inside our game, completely unexpected by our trackers. There's going to be tremendous heat from the police and FBI coming our way soon. What's gone before was nothing, Sarah, absolutely nothing. The manhunt will increase exponentially from here on." Sarah nodded in agreement. "I want to get someone else to do the next kill," Sam went on. "That way we'll both have airtight alibis. I think it's a powerful twist. If anyone is on to either of us, this will throw them off completely." "I like your thinking," said Sarah. "Who would you get?" "I've already made a contact," Sam replied. "I think I have the perfect person for this little twist. He thinks the way we do, believes in the cause, and he happens to be right here in Washington."
A Secret Service agent named James McLean, one of Jay Grayer's lieutenants, walked me around the White House, filling me in on details about security. The grounds were covered by audio and pressure sensors, electronic eyes, and infrared. A SWAT team was on the roof at all times now. Helicopters were less than 2.5 minutes away. Somehow, I wasn't comforted by the tight security. "What do you think of all this?" McLean asked. "What I'm thinking is that every person working here has to be checked out," I said. "Alex, they've all been checked out." "Not by me," I said. "The same goes for everyone in the crisis group." Agent McLean stared at me for a long moment. "You're shitting me, aren't you?" "I shit you not," I said. "This is a murder investigation. This is how it's done." The Dragon Slayer had come to the White House.
The photojournalist had chosen a conservative dark gray suit for the sold-out performance of Miss Saigon at the Kennedy Center. He was so glad to be back in Washington, where he'd lived at various times in the past. He was happy to be back in the game as well. The game of games, he couldn't help thinking, and believing in his heart. Code name, Jack and Jill. Intrigue just didn't get better than this. His adrenaline was pumping, but he felt less than nothing about the intended victim tonight. What did one less human mean? Yet he could be perfectly normal in many other areas of his life. His sister Eileen, for example, called him the last believer and the last patriot. He was extremely cautious as he entered the glittery Kennedy Center with its gleaming crystal chandeliers and Matisse tapestries. He was going to murder in public view, under the bright lights, under all of these prisms and lamps. and not get caught. What an incredible magic trick! How good he was at this! His seat was in the back of the orchestra, almost underneath the president's box. Very nice. Just about perfect. He purposely arrived just as the house lights dimmed. He was actually surprised when the intermission came. So fast. He slowly rose from his cushy seat. Now for the night's real drama, he was thinking. For tonight's performance, the part of Jack will be played by Kevin Hawkins. There was a very nasty and difficult trick to this killing, Kevin Hawkins knew. He had to get unbelievably close to the victim before he actually committed the murder. The photojournalist was thinking about it as he successfully blended into the noisily buzzing theater crowd in the grand foyer. He eventually spotted Supreme Court Justice Thomas Henry Franklin. Franklin was the youngest member of the current court. He was an African American. He looked haughty, and that fitted his reputation around Washington. He was not a likable man. On the justice's left arm was a 23-year-old woman. Hawkins had done his homework on Charlotte Kinsey, too. He knew that she was a second-year law student at Georgetown. He knew other dark secrets about Charlotte Kinsey and Justice Franklin as well. Kevin Hawkins carefully moved toward the Supreme Court judge and his beautiful date. He physically brushed against the two of them. He actually touched the law student's long, shiny hair. She carried a leather bag on her left shoulder. It was slightly open, just enough. The photojournalist slid something inside her bag. Success. The hard part was over, he knew. The close work. Now, the simple act of murder. His heart suddenly jumped. Something was going wrong. Charlotte Kinsey was reaching into her bag. She'd found the note he'd left there. The note from Jack and Jill. Wrong, wrong, wrong. She had gotten the justice's attention now. He glanced down at the note. No, Jesus, no! Kevin Hawkins operated on pure instinct. No time to second-guess himself now. He moved forward very quickly and surely. His Ruger was out, dangling below his waist. The gun was concealed because of the closeness of the crowd. He raised and fired the Ruger just once. He saw the sudden blossom of crimson red. The body jolted, then crumbled and fell to the marble floor. He dropped the Ruger into the jumble of legs, trousers, satin, and taffeta gowns. "Was that a gunshot?" a woman shrieked. "Oh, God, someone's been shot!" Kevin Hawkins backed away from the spectacle as just about everyone else did. He was part of them, part of the fearful, bolting crowd. His face was a convincing mask of shock and disbelief. In another tense few moments, he was outside the Kennedy Center. He was heading toward New Hampshire Avenue at a steady pace. He was one with the crowd.
Alex, they struck again. Jesus, the Kennedy Center. Right under our noses. Jay Grayer definitely sounded out of control. I'll meet you there. Who was it this time? I almost didn't want to hear the answer. That's part of the problem, he said. It really wasn't anybody. A law student from Georgetown University, a young woman named Charlotte Kinsey. They left one of their notes again. It's them for sure. I kept hearing what Jay had said. It wasn't really anybody, Alex. How the hell could that be? I drove to the Kennedy Center in record time. I heard Jack and Jill mumbled several times as I made my way to the grand foyer. Fear was a tangible, almost physical presence in the crowd. There were some similarities with the other Jack and Jill killings. The job had been done coldly and professionally, but there were huge differences this time. They seemed to have destroyed their pattern. Copycat killer? Maybe. But I didn't think so. But why the law student? Charlotte Kinsey had been a nobody. There was another new twist. The other killings had been private affairs, safer and more controllable. Jack and Jill had taken a huge risk committing this murder in such a public place. Shit! What were they up to now? Maybe they finally made a mistake. That was our best hope. It would show that they weren't invincible. Please let this be a goddamn mistake. I saw Agent Grayer and walked over to him. Alex, thanks for getting down here so quickly, he said. Anything worthwhile turn up yet? I asked him. Grayer rolled his eyes toward the glittering chandeliers above us. Oh, yeah. Definitely, Alex. Charlotte Kinsey. She's somebody after all. She was President Burns' mistress. My chest felt seriously constricted as I bent over the dead woman. She was pretty, prime of her life. One shot to her heart had ended that. I read the note they left in the law student's handbag. The handwriting was the same. It was them. Jack and Jill came to the hill. Your mistress had no clue, sir. She was a pawn, but now she's gone, and soon will get to you, sir. God help us all, I thought, but especially President Thomas Burns. The next morning I drove 8 miles down to Langley, Virginia. I wanted to spend some time with Gene Sterling, CIA's Inspector General, and also their representative on the crisis team. Supposedly, the agency had a lead that was worth checking out. Don Hamerman told me that Gene Sterling had been a professor of law at the University of Virginia years before joining the agency. Now her job was to help clean up the agency from the inside. Hamerman told me she had been put on the crisis team for one reason. She was the agency's best mind. Sterling met me in the gray carpeted hallway outside her office.
Ah, Dr. Cross. Thank you for coming down here. I have something interesting to discuss with you.
We entered her large office, which had a commanding view of the woods. Photographs of her family were up on the walls. Cute kids, I couldn't help noticing. Nice-looking husband, tall and lean.
Something important has come up, she said. But before I get into it, a question. This one completely off the beaten track, Alex, so bear with me. Our analysts have been searching but were not aware of any useful psychological study that's looked at professional assassins. I'm talking about studies on the contract killers used by the Army, the DEA, the agency. Are you aware of anything?
There's not much written about homicide in any of the psych journals, I told her. Where are you going with this? I had a lot of questions for her suddenly. Contract killers. I knew that they were registered somewhere, but not with the D.C. police. Perhaps for that reason, they were sometimes referred to as ghosts. Familiar alarms were sounding inside my head.
We think one of our former contract killers might be out of control, Sterling told me. That is why the CIA is on the crisis team. We think one of ours might be Jack.
Gene Sterling and I went for a ride in the Inspector General's new Volvo station wagon, which she drove like a race car. We were headed for Chevy Chase, one of Washington's small, affluent bedroom communities. I was about to interview a ghost, a professional killer named Andrew Clark. Plot and counterplot, ruse and treachery, true agent, double agent, false agent. Didn't Churchill describe your business something like that? I asked. She cracked a wide smile.
We're trying to change from the past, both the perception and the reality. The CIA is no longer a cult, as we've been called by several self-serving congressmen. We're changing everything. Fast.
You disapprove? I asked her.
Oh, not at all. It has to happen. I just don't like all the theater surrounding it. So, what have you heard about us, Alex?
Don Hamerman says you're a straight arrow, and that's what the agency needs right now. He says they call you Clean Gene. He's a big fan of yours.
Oh, I'm not really such a goody-goody, she said. I was a spy in Europe. Harmless stuff, information gathering mostly. After that, I was at the War College, Fort McBain. I fervently believe in our form of government. I'm also hooked on making it work better somehow. I think we actually can.
That sounds pretty good to me, I told her. We were just pulling up to a house that was colonial revival, 3 stories, very homey and nice. Inside, a trained killer was waiting for us. It was past 3 when Andrew Clark and I began our talk. It wasn't the first time I had conversed with a man who murdered for a living, a mass murderer, so to speak. This killer, however, was allowed to go home nights to his family in Falls Church and lead what he described as a normal, rather guilt-free life. Andrew Clark laughed.
Dr. Cross, I never committed a crime in my life. Never even got I never got a speeding ticket.
He laughed again. He was a whale of a man who looked as if he could move very well anyway.